The funny thing was last week we did
wonderful.
actually have it at 3 my time. So that was the first time it was actually at 3. And this is the second time I
But you
actually
didn't have tea. So if we combine the 2 weeks,
Right.
actual tea at 3.
Hello, Graham.
Oh, hello, Faith. I love your mountain behind you. That's where you go for walks now.
I live in this neighborhood down here somewhere.
Okay.
And then I can just walk right up. You can kind of see it. You can walk right up this trail all the way up there. And then you get a beautiful view of the city.
Wonderful. Well,
It's
a beautiful view. Yes, you compliment it. Well done.
And welcome back, everyone, to Tea at 3. I'm Faye Schmidt, and this is Graham Kerr. So last week, we had a guest, and it was wild, and we had a blast. But we didn't exactly get to talk a whole lot about the things between the two of us, but that's okay, because that's just what happens. So we're back now today with just the two of us who get to do all the talking. So last week, Graham, you brought up the idea of a story of us seeing something good in the world, from kind of inspired by the 3 things that we hope for the world, and seeing that and using those as like a way to fuel our hope in that, yes, the future can be good. Yes, there can be change. Yes, we are moving forward. So we have a couple of stories to share this week, and hopefully those are inspiring to other people as well.
Good. And maybe as our viewing friends would also, instead of having to ponder, which is what we always ask them to do, we've asked them this week to keep their eyes open and ears open to see whether they can see something happening in their immediate environment, which gives them some hope for the future. So go ahead.
Yeah, I will say, for starters, it was a wonderful attitude to have throughout the week. Like, whereas sometimes our pondering can be very introverted and internal, like we are having thoughts about like ourselves and where our place is in the world, but this week it was very like external, very much like observing what's happening around us, and it was a wonderful attitude to have throughout the week. Like, I'm really excited to like keep my eye out for things that are good that are happening around me. So one story, this happened a little while ago, but I thought of it as something that like truly amazes me. One of my close friends got married not even a year ago, and a couple months ago her husband's mother died, and he had a much younger brother. I think he was 12, and they ended up adopting him. So she's been married for like a couple months. She's a couple years younger than me, and she is a mother now of a 12-year-old. So the fact that she could open her heart to that, and like open her world to that, so like so much love and so much more responsibility. Like, honestly, I'm amazed by her every day. Like, that's a crazy cool thing to be able to do.
What a lovely example. That is really special. Okay, so should I come next? And then I've got a couple. You've got a couple.
I have another one too. So why don't you go next?
Okay. Do you want to carry on, or shall we alternate?
Let's alternate.
Okay. All right. Well, I am a part of a group of people who are making a huge change this week. And therefore, I'm looking around me, and everybody is nervous, because it's like attending a new school, and you know some of the students who are there, but it's your first time in that new school, and you feel, that's how it feels. It really does. So what we're trying to do is put together little teams of only 8 people. And this is a sort of an example of the linkage that we're trying. We want to be linked together in love for each other, but also for our immediate environment, so that it isn't a sort of closed group sort of coming into the middle. It's a closed group looking outwards, if you will. And we're using that phrase, beyond our own immediate self-interest. And you and I, you said it just now, we've been looking at our internal things Because if the internal really isn't having much fun, we're not likely to have much fun going out. So something needs to change within. So what I'm so excited about hearing is two groups have met already, and my group that I'm responsible for meets tomorrow. And so we're getting the very first feedback from people, and we're deliberately saying to them, hey, this is not about me as the host being a leader. This is me as the host listening to what you are seeing around you. Because if you're seeing that things are being ruined and that it's hopeless, it looks bad, and people are suffering, then we need to find out what we can do, because we just can't sit here and mope about it. It's a doing thing. And each one of us sees the world in a different way. And yet each of us can come together and agree together, let's do this one thing. And there's something about the multiplication of one good heart meeting 7 other good hearts and deciding that the world can be changed microscopically, you know, almost as if it doesn't matter, but it does, because we live in an environment here of older people, as you can see. And, and our age is 80 plus average. So because of that, we're a very high risk group of people with regard to COVID-19. Therefore, for 6 months now, almost, we have really, really been disciplined, ourselves disciplined, because of each other. Why go down and wear a face mask and rub your hands all over everything, come back and then give somebody a hug? That doesn't happen, and it hasn't happened, and we haven't had a single infection in 5 months in this place. So we're doing something right, and we're very thrilled about that. But we're sad, because what we used to be able to do, to give each other a hug and be in a small group of people and care for each other and make tea or coffee and have a cookie together, we can't do that. And that seems like we've lost out on such a big part of our lives. So the Zoom thing comes in. And we're all absolutely, woo, no way. You know, we're so aged in our attitude that Zoom seems to be, that's for 26-year-olds. Yeah, that's not for us. It's been hardship for me to be able to grasp it, but doing this with you has made it possible for me to believe that there is a real emotional opportunity to be able to come through a screen with zero possibility of infection. The only thing that can come through that screen is my love for you and your love for me. And that can be nurtured over time. So why can't that happen here? So we're Zooming together with all the complexities and glitches and everything else from that. And I can't tell you how exciting it is. We are facing another 6 months of being separated from each other. And now here's a tool that can draw us closer together. And it's real. So I am just about as pumped as I can be and hoping I don't mess it all up tomorrow.
I love that. That's great.
Story.
You know, I hadn't actually really heard of Zoom until you and I started doing these calls. So we kind of learned about it around the same time.
Wow.
But yeah, It's great that there's tools like this that can bring us together and that people are willing to learn them.
That's the big thing. I've thought in my life, you know, people take a lot of store about the moment that they made a decision which changed their life. I think the only thing, the key issue of changing life is willingness. And therefore, if a person isn't willing, then they don't get to Zoom. But if they are willing, then they can. And all of a sudden, potential for joy comes into life. So I'm just thrilled about that. So what's your next one?
Yeah, okay. So luckily for me, I was able to go from a place where it was just me and my husband, and now we've moved in with another couple, partially just because that was the way that we could afford to live in a house instead of an
Yes.
apartment, and partially because they're good friends and they're willing to sign a lease with us and we're not killing each other yet. Um, so I've gone from a smaller community to a little bit more of a community, and a lot of that is difficult because we have to trust each other that we're all wearing masks and washing our hands and not being irresponsible in any way.
Yeah.
But so my decision to become vegetarian, which I've talked a lot about, is not that like I disagree with the idea of eating meat entirely. It's simply that I feel like if some people go farther than is entirely necessary, then we can balance out the people who aren't willing to go there yet. So that's why I'm not eating meat at all. I have mostly convinced my husband to be also like mostly not eating meat, or my friends who live with us, the wife she has been vegetarian since she was like 10. So 3 of us in this household are vegetarian, and the 4th one, he is a chef and he absolutely loves meat and like just like truly enjoys food and cooking with it and like being involved in every aspect of it. And it's really great to see. But and like when we first moved in together, he would still like buy meat for himself, and we have decided to share groceries between all of us, and oftentimes we cook dinner together. He at the beginning was bringing home a lot more meat, but we were having shared meals, and so he was having them largely by himself, or he would like cook 2 separate meals and like have one for him and one for all of the rest of us. And I never thought that was going to change, but over the past like 2.5 months of living here, he's like, I can tangibly see him like purchasing less and less meat, just because like it just feels so normal for us not to, now that like the 3 of us just like have daily meals and like cook all the time without it. I never thought that was going to happen ever. Like it is crazy to see that I am making an individual change, and I've never asked him to stop eating meat. I've never asked him to stop purchasing it. I just asked him for it to not be a part of our shared groceries, but I never said he couldn't bring it into the house or anything like that. But it's amazing to see like these what feel like small, insignificant personal changes can slowly, like if we're keeping those 3 things that we had from last week, if we're keeping those in mind constantly throughout our daily lives, we are becoming examples of what we want to see in the future. And even if we're not like throwing $100 towards some sort of donation, if we're just living into those ideals, then we become examples, and someone who you think is like completely like one of the most stubborn people I know can like become aware of that and like see the like normalcy and how life can move on like through this change and continue on. And I never really thought of that being that big of a deal, but like kind of started to notice it this week as we were like thinking about the good that we see in the world. And it's just like, it's an amazing change that's happened, and it brings a lot of hope to me to be like, if I make these individual changes for myself, those can start to bring about whole societal change moving forward.
Yeah. Do you see that as a ripple effect, really? It's a choice you've made, and your choice, you're living it, and that just naturally sets up a ripple. And the ripple, after a very short period of time, it stops rippling, because it's just, if you threw a stone into a lake, you know, the shores wouldn't experience the ripple. But in a small group of you, like living together like this, it does, especially when you don't insist on your own way. Now, that's what I call loving people. And I think that is one of the problems of religion. We've had a tendency over time to insist that this is what God wants, and therefore you better get it, otherwise you're going to hell. And I'm sorry, but I've got to the stage now of saying that I don't think that's a ripple effect. I think it's a kind of tsunami. Do it my way or the highway. And I just do not believe in a God like that. I believe in a God who says that he's not willing that any should perish, but everyone should have eternal life. I like that guy. And I want to be a part of that. And so I want to ripple that way. So I think that's exactly what you're doing. And you don't have to see him become a total vegetarian. The fact that he's limiting to some degree what he does because he respects you guys for what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And isn't that the thing, to be respected rather than feared in some way, being judged? I think that's right. So can I do another one?
Yes, sir.
This is really odd. I get an email telling me by my insurance company that they have a special deal for me because I'm an old person. You get a free bottle of whatever that stuff is that you take if you have flu. And you get a free bottle of this, and you get a swab unit to be able to get a test for COVID-19. And so you keep that at home. And if you happen to have cold symptoms, then you can immediately start taking this stuff, which works well to stop the flu. And you can take the swab to see whether, in fact, you've got COVID or not, because the early signs are the same. And you can send that off, and it's all free. We are going to give you this in order that this is available for you as the winter comes on. Isn't that cool? And so I went online and I typed in all my details, which they needed to have. And then it finishes off by saying, you're not approved. And if you think you should have been approved, call this number. So I call this number. I don't have a lot of time. This seemed such a good idea. And I had my eyes open and it really started. This is a commercial organization that's doing something, giving themselves away for people for their benefit. And I could think this is terrific. So I got this lady, and so she says, yes, I will certainly get down your details. So I give all my details again like this, and said, I will speak to the office. And so she speaks to the office. And there's a long delay in this one. I'm now on the phone for 34 minutes altogether, listening to some pretty decent music, actually, during that time, and trying to make notes about other things. In the end, she comes back and said, I don't seem to be able to get any answer, but I've asked them if they will ring you direct. And so you can expect a call from them direct. So I said to her, what's your name? You know my name and all my particulars at the present moment, but what's your name? And she said, my name is India. And I said, I want you to know how patient you have been in doing this one. I've been sort of patient by listening here, but I'm also thinking how patient you are, because you've been trying to get me an answer and you've kept on trying. And I think that's just remarkable. And I want to tell you that I really appreciate your whole attitude towards this. It's very fine. And she was thrilled to be told that. And I went looking for the swab and the medicine, and I wound up with somebody on another continent that was trying to do something for me and didn't succeed in having it done. But she did honestly try. And I thought, I felt special that had taken place in my life. So that was my other thing that I felt.
I'm glad that you found something good in that. That whole time I'm thinking of this like, oh, this insurance company is trying to take advantage of people. Like that's like my instinct from the beginning is like they just want your information and then they're not actually going to give you the thing and then they're going to make you go through this rigmarole. But like in spite of that, like you found some good in the world in that. Whereas like my instant reaction is like,
yes. Well, and I know how you felt when you were working at something that you thought, it's really a commercial enticement, and you didn't want to do that. And I know that that very thing could, and yeah, I'm not silly, but when you reach somebody who's really trying to serve in a very acquisitive, time-conscious culture that we're in at the present moment, isn't that lovely? Isn't that lovely? I think we need to celebrate it. Anyway, so my dear, it's your turn. What are we going to do? And let me say before you introduce it, when we had our dear friend, Peter, last week, the two of us, the moment he stopped talking and grabbed a hold of his drink, the moment that I saw he was going to drink, I could get a word in edgeways. And I didn't think about you. And I'm really sorry. Because I think by the end of it, there was a couple of old fellows who were just chatting away with each other, and we left you out. And I think I was sad about that. So
Well,
anyway.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I'm glad that we got the opportunity to feature a guest. I get to talk all the time, so. So yeah, speaking of that specifically, one of the things that, because we had a third person on and we didn't get to fully in-depth talk about all the things that we brought up, I am kind of going to steal one of your things because I'm interested to hear more about what you have to say about it. But you had talked about preventative medicine and that kind of thing. I was hoping that this week we could think about that more. So maybe you can elaborate about it a little bit, and then I'll sum up what we'll think about, how we'll think about it. So I'm kind of stealing a topic from you, but only because I'm really interested to hear more about what you have to say about it.
Okay. If I had heard about preventative medicine when I was 26 and really listened to that and made a conscious decision about it, which I think you've actually done, by the way. So I'm not concerned about talking you into it. I think it would have made a huge difference in our lives. I wouldn't have done the career that I did. I couldn't have done. And my wife, Trina, need not have had so much illness because of what it was that we did. I could have prevented that, certainly. So it's not just for 26-year-olds. I think it can go up to mid-50s, perhaps as far as 60. Say that it is possible to take some preventative steps and have a more disease-free life. I don't know how we ponder this one, but this is what I want to say so that we've got something to ponder. Okay, and I didn't think you were going to toss it back to me, so I'm knee-jerking now. I think it's possible to look at our normal size of plate and reduce the volume on that plate by about a third, and still be completely satisfied after we've finished eating. So I would say that to cut back the portion of meat consumed at one time to something like 3 ounces, right? It looks like a silly steak. A 3-ounce steak looks silly. Especially compared to I watch Mad in the Kitchen. I don't know whether you watch that. It's a wonderful program. And Madeline is just sensational. She had a huge block of meat the other day, which for me could have lasted for a month. But she was flopping this around with great gusto, and it looked absolutely delicious. I remembered how I used to do it. But to take a slice of that, which is 3 ounces, would be delicious, especially with the marinade mixer that she had with it. And with that, to be content is a really interesting question. And that's part of what it takes. And about all I can say right now, again, this is right off the top of my head, preventative medicine is a willingness to understand that in our culture, what we eat from day to day is not appropriate. As a people, we are eating too much of the wrong kinds of things, and we're just going to wind up sick. And so we have to do something about that in our culture today.
Yeah, I was thinking just about how, and I'm not trying to put blame on anyone else, but just about how like
No,
nutrition was never like anywhere in any part of my education. Like it's just, I don't know, lots of people yelling from lots of different directions, and maybe I picked up on a couple facts. Like
yes,
it,
yeah,
I think as I mentioned earlier, like my initial reaction to be so skeptical about information that is fed to me, because I think largely because right now all my information is fed to me through the internet, and therefore I'm already skeptical of information fed to me through the internet. And so because of that,
yeah,
like there doesn't always feel like there's a good place to learn these things. And I've never particularly tried deep dive and seek it out. I think maybe part of that is because I'm young and it didn't matter so much. But I think over the last 6 months, I've gotten a lot more anxiety about all that kind of thing. I wonder why. Um, um, but I've also like grew up with a family that didn't really go to the doctor very often. And
uh,
for like the past, I think maybe I have health insurance right now, but like for the past like 4 years before that, before this last fall, or this spring, I didn't have it. It's just not been like financially accessible to me. And I think it's just, I am seeking a way to do it myself. Like more and more,
yeah,
um, because going to the doctor for me is like, here's $180, you should go to sleep more. I'm like, okay, well, where can I learn that I need to go sleep more without paying the $180 just to talk to a
yes,
doctor?
yes, I know, yes,
Um, so yeah, that's part of the reason why I'm interested in that, to like see where we can where we can find information more, and what do I need to know? What do I need to be educating myself about now so that I can live to be 86? Because honestly, there is a part of me that is more and more a part of me over the past 6 months that believes that I will not live to be 50.
really.
I don't know what that comes from, but it's there. I just
Thank you. Do you know what we're doing now? We just got to be real. I do care for you. I do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to suggest to you, I, um, I'm going to show you next time we gather the journaling that I do with regard to food, and how I've kept a record of my personal health over this. I don't have to go to the doctor. I'm keeping my own medical data. And when I do go to the doctor, which is about once every 6 months, I will take my data and to him, and he can scan my data, and he has a perfectly good track record of my health. He said to me, I've never met anybody in my career who keeps this kind of data. And you could say, yeah, that's obsessive compulsive. Sweetie, we have one life to live. We might as well be as available as a ripple effect to those around us that would be of some benefit. And that's a reason for being alive and being well. But living in this very toxic environment that we have in our culture is awfully difficult. And we really do need to have a reason to do it. And I would just say to you, the future, you can live to have energy and to have purpose in life. Um, and this world is going to need people like you so badly as we go forward. It's going to get darker and darker. I think that's true. But your little flame is going to burn brighter and brighter against that darkness. I think that's true too. So that's a motivation to do that. So how do we ponder that? Am I willing to review everything I do at the moment and to very seriously consider making some changes, because I know that I'm consuming too much of something for my eventual good.
Yeah, and I think maybe for those of you out there like me who are way too concerned about others over your own good to a point of maybe you not taking care of yourself. If I am going to learn this information for myself, that's also something that I can then tell other people, and the whole like world
Yes.
can be a little healthier. So
yeah, I think when I was talking about preventative medicine, I was really thinking about the industry. To be more interested in helping people to be preventative rather than simply curing them when they get sick. We have a great industry for helping people who are at the end of their life to be maintained somehow with medication and surgery and everything else, all of which is very expensive. And that's where people cluster. And it's really hard to get up to the early stages of talking to someone like you about the rest of your life. Because it's not so rewarding, and yet it's so essential. If you look at the health statistics in Washington State, and then go across and see the health statistics in British Columbia, you'll see a marked difference in people's health. And the reason for that is that every year in Canada, everybody gets to have a checkup. And when they get to have a checkup, the pulse is taken and the blood sugars and everything else are looked at. And anything that's early warning gets to have an early warning and doesn't have to go over the cliff. It's just that's darn simple. It's social medicine, and people will say, yeah, but you have to wait forever to be able to get some help. And yes, you do have to wait longer, but you get help earlier. By and large, it works better than the system we have at the present moment. Anyway, so
yeah, I think this week we can be thinking of the ways in which we can make individual changes outside of a political system, because of course we'll be voting the ways that we believe. But beyond that, what are ways outside of that we can make individual changes to better our health and to learn more about what can do that, and what kind of, as much as we are trying to educate people about the health of the earth, perhaps we should also be trying to educate ourselves and those around us about the health of our own bodies. So that's what we'll be digging through this week, and we will see you all next week. This has been Tea at 3. I'm Faye Schmidt. This is Graham Care. We'll see you next week.
Good to be with you. Very good to be with you.
Please do also subscribe if you haven't already to this channel, and leave a like on the video if you liked watching, and leave your comments below. We absolutely adore hearing from you. Thanks so much. We'll see you next week.